Well, folks, welcome to another edition of Rimshots with Sean, brought to you by Barstools and Bandtalk. I don't know what's going on in North Carolina. It's been a long time since I've been down there, but I've been running into an awful lot of not only great bands, but super talented people. And two of them are in a band that I've got to know here over the last couple of weeks that had a release last month. We're a little late to the party, but nonetheless, we're going to have a good time here. We have Logan, we have Worth from All the Pretty Things. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
So, Logan, I'll start with you. The name, interesting name. Where does that originate from?
Man, I think Worth may know more about this one, but it kind of, as far as I know, it's more just a reflection of how we kind of wanted the music to sound. Basically the only rule we have for all this chaos is that everything just kind of needs to sound pretty. There can be some disasters in there and some destruction, but as long as the overall product has like a pretty vibe to it, that's our thing.
So I guess over to you, Worth. So just to kind of connect the dots there.
Yeah, absolutely. So whenever we were kicking around band name ideas, which is probably my least favorite part about being in a band, whenever we were doing that, you develop a list, and the one that hit the top was All the Pretty Things. And we actually got that from a Jimmy Eat World lyric off of one of their records. They're one of my favorite bands, very heavily influenced by them personally. So that's where the name stemmed from, and we just kind of ran with it. It really it popped, and we all enjoyed it and dug it, and so moved forward with it.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that band up, and I'm not going to say specifically when I heard the single that I was going, okay, that's a Jimmy Eat World influenced band. However, you guys did have kind of a I'll call it a peppy, I'll call it major kind of, it was a happy, not sad type of vibe to the tune. How far back are your influence in terms of, what you guys were drawing from? I mean, Jimmy Eats World was kind of like the 2000s type thing. The 90s for me were kind of a throwaway decade. It was kind of like, we're famous and we hate life, and it's, it's dark, it's dreary. The 2000s came along a little bit, but how far back are you drawing those influences from?
Me personally, I was raised on classic rock, R&B, blues, jazz, and some oldies. So a lot of my, just the way my brain processes music and song structure in general stems from that, those eras. Whenever I got into classic rock, like Zeppelin, Clapton, the Eagles, just to name a few, man. But I really jumped into that music, and it really affected me as a guitar player. And, moving forward, I actually am a 90s kid. I really love 90s alt rock. And that's something that really influences me heavily, maybe more towards like more of the underground bands, not really the mainstream 90s stuff as much. But yeah, I mean, I have such a wide variety and range of influences, and I always try to listen to new music consistently as well. So I'm just bombarding myself with tunes, and it somehow always just kind of comes out whenever I least expect it.
And I mean, a lot of the that 90s stuff, and I'll throw this to Logan, but a lot of that 90s stuff, I mean, there were some singers that came out of that era that, the biggest band, I guess, was Nirvana. And, say what you want about Kurt Cobain, love him or hate him or whatever, but you had the Chris Cornells, you had, the Eddie Vedders, you had these guys that, then different guys, I guess, later on in the decade and into the 2000s. But for all the, I guess, gloom and doom and whatnot, there was A, musicianship, and B, there's some really good singers that came out of that era.
Absolutely.
Would you be influenced by that same kind of era? Are you a little bit more of a 2000s kid? What are you there, Logan?
Man, I love my Chris Cornell. I love me some Chris Cornell, man. Like, huge influence. I mean, everything he touched was great for me, man. And he was just one of those guys that like went for it. Nothing held back, and like ended up pulling off some of the most epic male vocals of that entire era. Cobain too, man. Like nobody could sound as angry as that guy and still be like hitting notes and writing thoughtful music and that sort of thing. So those guys were both two real big influences for me. Yeah, and I definitely dabbled in the in the 2000s stuff a lot, like the early 2000s sort of scene rock, like the Taking Back Sundays and the My Chemical Romance and the Used and all that. And I come from a really musical family. So my dad kind of raised us on kind of, I mean, I don't know if I'll call it, it's kind of like a mix of like heady stuff and poppy stuff, but like he got us really big into like Peter Gabriel and Genesis and all that stuff. And those guys could wail too. And the musicianship was just something I always admired. So yeah, kind of like Worth, I'm all over the map. I just consume whatever I can.
Well, both of you guys to me, and I mean, we just met, but both of you guys to me sound like people that, I mean, I admittedly, if we were to hang out, I like what I like. I mean, I grew up on Kiss, Zeppelin, there's different sorts of things that if somebody says, you like this? Absolutely. You like that? Absolutely not. I'm pretty, I'd say pig-headed when it comes to that. You guys seem like you're way, I guess, more open-minded in terms of what you're bringing in. And I do think that based upon what I heard with the song, it's a real melting pot because, Worth, I'll go to you. When I heard the song, I was just like, it didn't sound like anything to me. Production-wise, very new, very, it didn't sound like, what you're hearing out of some things. It sounded very modern, very now. But I couldn't put my finger on any one influence or any two influences when I was listening to it.
Yeah, man, that's kind of, or that was and is still my goal with the band. I'm a producer. I have been for about 17 years. And at this point, like, when we started this project, I had a vision, still have that vision. And I was really trying to capture, everybody's influences in one big melting pot and then present that to everyone. That being said, man, it is kind of tough to put your finger on exactly, what's going on or why it sounds the way that it sounds. I have my technical approaches that I kind of stick to, but when it comes to the overall vibe, I think we are headed in the direction that, we want to go. And when you hear the follow-up singles that are going to be released next year, you're going to hear a lot more of that eclectic influence coming through. And then moving on to the full length that hopefully at the end of 2023, we're going to have, a very strong offering that reflects all of our influences accordingly.
Well, I don't want to geek out. I'm a drummer, and I find that most of the stuff that's been recorded in, I'll say 2008 on to now, almost sounds, because it's Pro Tools, because everything is just so perfect, it almost sounds robotic, and there's not a lot of feel, there's not a lot of swing. And the sounds kind of all sound the same. And the first thing that I heard as a drummer, like I say, not to geek out, I really liked the drum sounds that I was hearing. They sounded very, like, nice snare, nice kick. And I was like, okay, this guy, either he's a drummer or he really pays attention to drummers when he's putting things together.
That's really interesting that you mentioned that because, I'm in several different production communities, worldwide, and I talk to different producers. And there is this thing where everyone is just grabbing the same sample packs and, using the same kick and snare. I've always tried to kind of do my own thing, man. And I mean, that's really the only way that you as an artist in whatever medium you choose to pursue are going to generate any sort of legacy or any sort of signature. Maybe that was a better word, signature. And I've got my, like I said, I have my processes technically that I kind of stick to, but it's my sound and it's something that I really took to the next level with all the pretty things. There are the specific industry tropes that you kind of stick to, like your kick and snare, especially like in metal music or in, classic rock. And for us, man, I really tried to own in on giving us something unique. And I think it really came across in that song and the subsequent songs that you're going to hear.
Well, kudos, because like, admittedly, what happens to me as a drummer when I hear that first little bit of drumming, and it might not even be the player, but the sounds, I zone out. I might get through the whole song, but I don't really give it its due because, I focus on what I don't like. And when I heard that, I was just like, wow, this isn't just because we're sitting here talking. I was very impressed with what I heard. So hats off to you.
It means a lot. Thank you very much.
Well, no. And I mean, if you were, I find sometimes when people are looking to hit certain things and, they aren't acknowledged, it can be a real kind of pain. And I want to point that out because it was the first thing that kind of hit me between the eyes when I heard the tune. So Logan, so I guess what I want to ask you guys, and we'll go into this maybe more in the second segment, but I guess a sort of a running preamble or theme of my podcast has been the fact that it came through the pandemic. I mean, everything was shut down. I started this as something to do. I figured I'd be done 5 weeks. I'd be back out playing. Here I am, almost 2.5 years later, still doing it. Thank you. Folks like Jamie still ask me to interview great folks like you. But was this that for you guys, or did you put this together kind of before all this nonsense happened? And how did it come about?
That's a cool question. Worth and Tristan, I believe, had been tossing ideas around for quite a while before the pandemic. But it was just the two of them, really. I think they had demoed out plenty of stuff. Some of that stuff, I mean, one of the songs they had demoed out ended up being Teenage Lines. And right around the time the pandemic hit, I was actually living about 8 hours away from here in Wilmington, in the mountains, and I was pretty isolated already. And then the pandemic hit, and Worth and I had been talking because we were working together on another project for a different band. And he let me hear some of the stuff he and Tristan had been working on, and I was like, man, I've got to put vocals on this. You gotta let me do this. And they were looking for somebody to do it, and so admittedly I took my sweet time with it, but I did take the tracks back to the mountains with me and hole up there in total isolation. And I mean, I do think that whole vibe of the pandemic drove a lot of what I had to say. There was a lot of frustration with my situation in particular. I was in the process of getting out of a pretty bad relationship and that sort of thing, and working remotely. So it was like my whole life was like trapped in this house, and I just had a lot of demons I needed to get out of me. And for better or for worse, I think the pandemic kind of pushed the project along for us, but I wouldn't say it was the origin. I think they were working on it, and the pandemic just allowed me the time and the energy to focus on getting some of these songs done.
Well, interesting you say that, because again, a running theme is that if the shutdown forced people to kind of take a look inside and go, okay, I'm really going to do something here. I'm going to friggin' cry in my cornflakes, and all is lost and everything's done. And the people that really focused on the tunes, the projects, the technology were the ones that came out the other side stronger and better, and have projects now that you're starting to see that are really cool. Yeah. The one thing for me, though, Logan, and I'll throw this over to you too, Worth, that I'm starting to see a little bit now is people, in particular the audience, is kind of forgetting, maybe not some of the bigger rock shows, but some of the smaller things. They forgot that we were out without this thing for almost 2 years. Maybe they're taking for granted live music a little bit. Are you seeing that, or have you guys got a chance to get this thing out in front of people yet?
Worth, you want to grab that one?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So we have yet to play out yet, or yet to play out yet. There we go. We've yet to play out as a band, but we do have plans to do that, in the coming year. I think right now we're really just focused on wrapping up all of the songs that we have, for the LP, and that's our main focus. But speaking to like the actual scene, I guess you would call it more of the local or regional scene. I mean, I've still seen pretty positive responses as far as, not just numbers, but, people getting into shows and having a great time. But, it's going to be different based upon where you're located, I'm sure. But I think the interest for music is still there. And, the desire for people to go and see live music is still there. I think it's just been diffused a little bit because there's so much content and so many people doing it now. So to really grab that attention, I mean, you really have to be on your A game. You've got to present something that is just fantastic, that sticks out. And that was our goal with this band. We want to do something slightly different. And once again, I think we've achieved that as a band, and moving forward, we're just really excited about where this thing's going to go.
You know what? That's a great point, and I think a great way to end our first segment. You guys good? You guys good for a break here? We can come back for segment 2?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right. We're back after this, folks.